I stood beside my husband's hospital bed, cradling his hand in mine, barely able to feel the warmth that once pulsed so surely through his fingers. The machines around us hummed and beeped in soft, mechanical rhythm, a hollow lullaby that only deepened the ache inside my chest. His breaths had grown faint, shallow wisps of life fading with each exhale. The doctors had spoken gently, carefully, telling me what I already knew but wasn't ready to accept. The end was near. I leaned down and kissed his forehead, letting my lips linger as if I could hold time still through touch alone. "I love you," I whispered, my voice cracking under the weight of grief, my tears falling freely, unashamed and unending. After all the years we'd spent side by side, through laughter, storms, quiet dinners and sleepless nights, this moment felt both impossible and unbearably final. A cruel twist of life to say goodbye to the only person who had ever truly known me. When I stepped out of the room, it felt like a betrayal. Every footstep away from him was a war between love and exhaustion. I had been awake for 3 nights, refusing to leave his side, watching his chest rise and fall like the tide, slow, uncertain. The nurses, kind and concerned, gently urged me to go home to rest just for a little while. I nodded, hollow and numb, praying I wouldn't regret those few hours. I turned the corner toward the elevator, the fluorescent hallway stretching endlessly before me. But as I neared the nurse's station, my steps slowed. My ears caught the faint sound of his name, spoken softly like a secret, and I paused, not out of curiosity but instinct. And then the words that followed shook something loose inside me. "He's been asking for her every hour," one nurse said in a low voice, almost reverently. "Even when he couldn't open his eyes. He just kept saying her name." "I know," another replied. "And he told us not to tell her how much pain he's really in. Said he didn't want her to carry that on top of everything else." I stood frozen, the sterile walls suddenly spinning. My husband, my brave, sweet husband, had been holding on to his pain in silence, protecting me even as his own body gave out. While I'd been trying so hard to stay strong for him, he'd been quietly shielding me, sparing me the weight of watching him suffer. Tears welled up again, a fresh tide, unstoppable. And then the first nurse added softly, "He gave me a letter to give her. Said it was for after, when it was time. Told me to keep it in the drawer with his things." I didn't know about any letter. The thought of it lodged in my chest, a quiet panic blooming. A part of him I hadn't yet received. Something sacred left behind. I turned back toward them before I could second-guess myself, walking as calmly as I could to avoid betraying how rattled I was. When they saw me approach, their faces shifted, surprised then somber. I overheard a little," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Is there really a letter?" The older nurse gave a slow, gentle nod, then walked over to a drawer and opened it. She pulled out a sealed envelope, thick and cream-colored, with my name written across the front in the unmistakable curve of his handwriting, shaky but still his. I reached out with trembling fingers and took it, cradling it like something fragile, sacred. I sat down on one of the nearby chairs, the letter clutched to my chest, my heart pounding like it was trying to drown out the silence. I stared at the envelope for a long time before I could bring myself to open it. Finally, I slid my thumb beneath the flap and unfolded the pages inside. His writing was uneven, like each word cost him more strength than he had, but it was filled with so much love that it made my breath catch. He thanked me for everything. For the life we built, for standing beside him through every high and low, for being the light in his darkest moments. He told me that even in pain, loving me had been his greatest joy. And then came the words that undid me completely. He asked me not to grieve for long. Not to carry guilt. He wrote that love doesn't leave us even when someone does. He told me to live. To really live. To breathe fully, laugh loudly, and love again without shame or hesitation. Not because he didn't matter, but because I still did. By the time I finished reading, I was sobbing. The kind of deep, unfiltered cry that comes from the soul. I pressed the letter to my chest like it could hold him there, like the ink on the paper could tether him to me for just a little longer. I had walked out of that room thinking I'd said my final goodbye. But his words brought him back one final time. A piece of him that would stay with me always. I stood up, wiped my eyes and walked back to his room. He was still alive. Barely. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallower now than before. I sat beside him, took his hand in both of mine and leaned close. "I got your letter," I said loud enough for him to hear. "I love you. I love you so much." His lips twitched, just the smallest movement, but it was enough. A tiny smile, barely there but real. I didn't let go of his hand again. I stayed with him until the very end. Held him as he slipped away, kissed his forehead one last time and whispered thank you. The pain of losing him was as sharp as I'd feared, but the letter softened it in ways I hadn't thought possible. It was his final gift, one last act of love and strength and grace. In the days that followed, I framed it. It now sits on my bedside table, the first thing I see in the morning and the last thing I read before I sleep. That letter gives me courage when I feel empty. It helps me breathe when everything else feels heavy. And slowly, day by day, I'm learning how to live again. Just like he wanted.